We're here to empower high-income earners to gain back control of your time through financial independence and stop trading your time for money and start letting your money work harder for you.
And hey, if you want to meet other high-income earners on their FIRE journey, join our High Income Earners FIRE Facebook group. Every month, we'll have guest speakers and we'll share about what our team is currently working on and allow you to share what you are working on with other high-income earners.
Today, we have a very special guest, a bit younger than me as well. He used to work as a barista at Starbucks and was working for 3 years as a server at a restaurant, but now he owns multiple 7 and 8 figure business. And he's running one of the businesses that has a lot of traction, especially in a high interest rate environment. So without further ado, I want to welcome Aaron Bae.
Thank you, Cody. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So Aaron, like for audience that don't know you and your story, can you kind of tell us a bit about upbringing and how do you get to this point?
Sure. So I think like most people, they entered through this entrepreneurship journey through reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And luckily I stumbled upon that book back when I was in grade 8. So it was a very, very early point in my life where I was, at a time where I was trying to debate about what I wanted to be when I was older. And I stumbled upon that book and all these other aspirations about, I want to be a scientist, I want to be a doctor, astronaut and stuff. All that went out the window. And I was like, I just want to be rich, man. Like, I just want to have a lot of money. So I fell upon that at an early age. And ever since then, I've just been stuck and fixated on this whole idea of real estate passive income. So long story short, I entered university. I dropped out in my 4th year. And then I didn't really know what to do. I was studying, at first I was studying economics in Waterloo. Okay. And then I transferred to hospitality management in Ryerson.
Oh, that planted the seeds, right?
Funny enough, it's kind of in line with what I'm doing now. But anyways, I dropped out in my 4th year. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I had to make money somehow. So I've also always had a passion for coffee. So I got the first job that I could think of, which was at a cafe as a barista. So I spent about 3 years working as a barista, making minimum wage. And then I realized that I had to start making more money. So from there, I was trying to think of all the other jobs that I could get at the time. And for me, someone with no degree, someone with no particular skills, I figured the best high paying job that I could make would be as a server. So I started serving at a restaurant with my wife.
High-end restaurant? Or is it a high-end restaurant?
Not really high-end per se. It was like a sushi restaurant. So like medium.
But you don't get a lot of tips at sushi restaurant, right? Isn't that where people actually make money? The tips?
Yeah. I actually make quite a bit of tips as a server. So working, 60-hour weeks at 2 different restaurants. One was a sushi place, one was a fried chicken place, in like a Korean fried chicken place. So I was making about 4,000, maybe 5,000 a month, depending on like the season, how much, all in with the tips. And that was times 2 because I was making money and my wife was making money. We were both working, just, busting our butts off. Right. So at the time, we were just busy saving money. And then when I turned 27, so another 3 years later, I really wanted to get into the space of real estate investing. And I was watching all these podcasts, reading books, and getting really infatuated with the idea again with passive income through real estate investing. But at the time, I just did not have enough money for a down payment to buy a house. So I was, I was thinking critically. I was like, how can I get into the game of passive income in real estate investing, but without owning a house? Like I was just trying to think of creative ways. And I figured that, okay, cool. I stumbled upon this one person who talked about renting out bedrooms in their house. And it was like a family friend of mine who was like, yeah, they bought a house in North York. And at the time, houses were going for like $2 million, like $3 million. And a cool way to make some extra money was to rent out some spare bedrooms, right? Offset the mortgage costs and so on. So I'll say, okay, cool. What if I rented a house and then rented out the bedrooms for profit, right? So it was this long search, this long journey of looking for landlords who would allow me to sublet their property on a room by room basis. And that wasn't an easy conversation to have. I think I went through like 20 plus showings and everyone just told me to get lost.
Yeah. But this is scary, right? A lot of people read those scary news about someone packing 27 people in one house, right?
Right. And they don't want their house to get degraded, right? So like, luckily I would actually stumbled upon another family friend. So my wife's aunt is a realtor, and she had a friend who was like, hey, I'm going to Korea. I'm going to be leaving this house vacant. Can you rent it out for me? And then, you know, her aunt spoke to her and said, hey, like, you know, my niece wants to rent this house. She wants to do some room rentals. Is that cool with you? And she was like, oh yeah, like, you know, it's your niece. Like, I trust you guys. You're not going to, you know, mess up the house and stuff. So that's kind of how we landed upon the first deal. And then it was this giant house in North York with like 7 bedrooms with 2 basement rooms and an extra office that we could turn into a bedroom. So long story short, it was 10 bedrooms in this gigantic house, and we rented out every single room by room, to international students at like $800 to $1,000 per room.
Do they each have ensuite, like their own washroom, or no? They share washroom?
5 of the bedrooms did. And then there were like the 2 communal, like shared bathrooms, right?
Okay.
So other people shared those. And then we got to a point where the 2 master bedrooms were not renting out, and we wanted to rent them out at like $1,300 a month. But, you know, international students, they have limited budgets and they're not spending $1,300 a month for these bedrooms. So that's when we're like, cool, like we can either just continue trying to get someone to rent these rooms, or we can put them on Airbnb and just try it, right? So we put them on Airbnb, and from then on, you know, everything just kind of like clicked, and we're making about $4,000 to $5,000 a month in net profits from this
just those 2 master bedrooms. So
no,
that's your auntie's property, right? Is that your auntie's property?
Aunt's friend's property.
Aunt's friend. So she basically say, okay, rent it for me. Like, what was the promise to her? Like, you're going to give her a fixed rent, a market rent, and then you take all the difference, or what was the agreement there?
So it was like, I'll pay you a fixed rent. I'll manage your property. I'll take care of it. I'll do lawn care, the snow care and everything. And I'll just make sure that the house does not sit vacant, right? Yeah. So I'll give you a fixed income where you pay the mortgage.
Did you pay her at that time?
$5,800 a month.
$5,800. Oh, wow. And then how much were you actually grossing with renting an individual room, the 8 room, and then 2 on Airbnb? Like, how much were you gross income per month?
It was about $12,000 to $13,000 a month.
Wow. So that's double of it.
Yeah, pretty much double. And then obviously there's like, you know, utilities, the internet, lawn care, snow care, maintenance, the cleanings and all that. So net was like about $4,000 to $5,000 a month, depending on the seasonality.
And do you guys live in there? You and your what?
It's actually funny because we were actually thinking of living in there to offset our costs and rent hacking. But we realized that this property was spitting out so much cash flow that it was effectively paying for the rent of our condo downtown Toronto. So it would pay for the rent, and we would still get extra money to live off of. And that was game changer.
Yeah. So for a lot of people, our listeners, including myself, I'm actually still renting. A lot of people don't get it. It's like, Cody, you own multiple properties. Why are you still renting? There's certain reasons for that, not just for mortgage, but for flexibility, and, you know, really can pick where you want to live and all that, right? So there's certain reasons for that, and Aaron's still doing it as well. If you can get more,
still doing it.
If you could get more rent somewhere else and use those money to pay where you want to actually live, but you don't want to own the property because it doesn't cash flow, then, you know, that could be a good choice.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, I cut you off. So you were that was her first property. And walk us through, how does that first property turn to what we so-called the empire you have now?
Okay. So ever since then, basically our savings snowballed. Like, Ariane and I were not very big spenders to start with. So even as working as servers, like we're still saving quite a bit of our income, right? Like we're making like 8,000 to 10,000 a month with rents, living expenses. Like we're still saving probably half of that, if not more. Once we got that first deal, that was paying for our rent, which is everyone's biggest expense, right? Most people's biggest expenses, their accommodations, their mortgage, their rent, and it was also paying for our groceries. So we could effectively save about 100% of our earned income as servers. So now we're saving like 8,000, 10,000 a month, and it's just like stacking up. And it got to a point after about 2 years where it's like, we have so much in savings. Like, why don't we just try getting more of these properties? Like, this is really snowballing into something great. And then we started buying properties. We bought a duplex in Kitchener.
Okay.
And we rented out the upper and the lower on Airbnb. And that started making about 4,000 a month in net profits. So now
when was that?
Like, that was in 2020.
And you say net or gross? Like net $4,000, deducting all from
like 3,000, 4,000 a month.
Deducting all the, property tax, insurance, yada, yada, utilities, mortgage, all that.
Expense and everything.
4,000. So you probably
grossing. Yeah. We're grossing about 8,000, 9,000, like 10,000 a month, even in like, the peak months, right? So we're like, our fixed expenses with mortgage, utilities, property tax, insurance, and everything all in, we're still under like $4,000, and we're making all this money on top. Like, that was just complete, like, it was insane, right? At the time, mortgage rates were insanely low. So we're just like, cool. Like, we're onto something very special. I thought I was rich at the time. I was like, we're making like $4,000 or $5,000 from this one property as arbitrage. And then we're making all this money on this duplex. Plus we're working as servers. Like, dude, like, we're rich. And then after that, like we found more deals, but we didn't have the down payment to buy a house for a second property. Because the first property we just bought a turnkey, right? Like
you guys bought the duplex turnkey. How much was it? $500K.
It was $595 at the time, and it was kind of expensive for Kitchener-Waterloo. But we're just like, you know what? Let's just get into this property as our cash flow. Like, the numbers made sense, right? Then we want to buy a triplex, but I had like 80 grand left, and we needed a down payment of 150. So I was like, like, what can I do to like get this deal funded? So I went on social media. I started, showing off like, oh, I'm making this much income from this arbitrage property. I'm making this much money from this duplex property. And I see all these people, all these investors making like 500, 600, 700 a month in cash flow and saying, hey, I'm financially free. I'm like, dude, I could like quadruple that number for you, right? Just partner with me. I'll quadruple that number for you. So then I started pitching to a lot of investors, making connections. And I eventually got to a point where I met this one guy who had money and he wanted to get into a property. He just didn't really understand how to go about doing it. So I was like, okay, let's get into this together. So we bought this triplex together. And I had to actually make concessions where it was like, if this property is not a perfect BRRRR, whatever money is stuck in the property, I will contribute half of that amount back to you. So like, we're in this together, right? Like, just give me a shot here. And funny enough, the numbers perfectly lined. It was a perfect BRRRR, and this triplex cash flowed 5,000, 6,000 a month net.
Where's this triplex?
Kitchener.
Okay. Why are you in Kitchener?
Still cash flows.
You live in North York. Well, back then, right? Why Kitchener?
It was like an hour away from where I lived. I actually went to Waterloo, the University of Waterloo for economics in my first year. So I had like an affinity to my home school, effectively, right? And I knew the area. I knew which locations were good. And I just felt like it was kind of a safer secondary market outside of the GTA, because I firmly believed in the KW economics of it. So I started making like 6,000 a month from this one triplex. He was making like 2,500, 3,000 a month in passive income. I was making that much money as
Do
well.
you guys have a 50-50 split between that?
50-50
Okay.
split. Yeah, we still have it. And then from there on, like I started really snowballing. And then I don't know if we should be talking about real estate investing or the arbitrage side, because I can go both ways. My next deal after that was a 22 unit apartment deal.
Where is that?
In Cambridge, Ontario.
There we go. Okay. Do you still have that?
I still have that. Yeah. That was a perfect BRRRR as well.
Okay. When you say perfect BRRRR, tell me about the process of that perfect BRRRR.
Okay. So basically, we would have to get all the non-paying tenants out, and that was a big struggle for us. So a big component of that was paying cash for keys to get the tenants out in that property.
Yeah.
And, these were people paying like 600, 700 a month when market rents were like 1,300, 1,400.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of room.
The previous landlord didn't want that problem. So we bought it. We bought the 22 unit building at 2.3 million. And by my numbers, I was expecting ARV, after repair value, of about $4.4 million. That was just off of like what I had anticipated. But after we turned over all the units, we actually, I think, except for one commercial tenant, we were able to get everybody out, and we turned the whole thing around in 2 years, which is pretty crazy. And then the appraised value after that was all done was 5.6 million.
Wow. Do you still own that property?
I still own it, yeah.
Wow.
So we refinanced with CMHC, and we pulled out about 3.55 million or something. Mm-hmm. So all in, the purchase was 2.3 million. We put in about 800 to 900,000 in renovations and turnover costs. So we're all in for about 3.1, 3.2. And then we refinanced, pulled out 3.5, 3.55-ish.
I mean, that sounds a big win to me. I mean, first of all, you bought it for 100K per unit. Like,
yeah.
First of all, you bought it cheap. And then second of all, you know how to turn over the tenants, right? Cash for keys, right? Really, if it's like $600 under market, there's a lot of money you can pay them and still come off top, right? Did you guys renovate the unit once they move out?
Mm-hmm. So we renovated everything. The big value add, though, was the third floor where they had student rentals. It was 10 rooms, and these people were paying about 500 a month. So what we did was we completely revamped the entire third floor, made the washroom so much better, made it into more of like a luxury co-living space. And then what happened was we marketed it as like a premium room rental, like co-living facility almost. So each person is now paying $850 to about $900 a month. So that was almost like 80% increase from the previous tenants. Mm-hmm. So that was another big lift that we made.
Do you mind if I ask you a question about the mortgage side of things? When you refinance, was it hard for CMHC to accept that you guys are short-term rental in this, or they kind of know or don't know?
Oh, we did a short-term rental this.
Oh, this is
these are all completely long-term.
Oh, completely long-term. Okay, this is your investing side. We're not talking about Airbnb arbitrage.
I can go both ways.
Okay. So so you still have that duplex in Kitchener. You have that triplex in Waterloo or Cambridge, sorry, and another 22 unit.
Yeah, in Cambridge, yeah. I also own a few other properties. I have another triplex in Waterloo. I have a motel out in Bayfield. I have a cottage up north. Like the whole portfolio side of things, we can go a whole another rabbit hole. But if you want to focus on the arbitrage, I think this would be a good pivot point.
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, long-term stuff, a lot of other podcasts are talking about. So that's why you're bringing on, why you need to talk about Airbnb arbitrage. So all these Airbnb arbitrage, you don't own these properties, right?
No.
So how did you get into this? And what's kind of like your first deal and comparing to the deal you're doing now?
So the first deal that I did was the gigantic house in North York. And then I was like, how can I replicate this, but like in a more efficient way? Like I didn't want to have 10 bedrooms to micromanage, and especially getting a cleaner in there to clean one bedroom and walk out was just like, it was a nightmare because no one wants to come clean a bedroom and walk out with like $20. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Right. So
Yeah.
I was like, how can I start renting full properties or like duplexes, triplexes, and just like put them as entire unit rentals on Airbnb? So I started pitching a very value focused proposal to other investors in my network. Like I would speak to investors all the time, right? And then they were like, "Hey, like I'm just finishing up BRRRR right now, and I have 2 units that I got to rent out." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, are you renting now to traditional tenants?" And they're like, what's the alternative? And I was like, "Well, I have an alternative solution for you." And I was like, "I'll guarantee the rents, right? Because if I don't make money from this property, then like basically your business becomes my business. Essentially, our interests are aligned, right? Like I will always pay the rent on time because I'm making money from your property, right? Second, when was the last time you saw a long-term tenant pay for professional cleanings at least once a week to clean your place?" They're like, "Well, never." And I was like, "Cool, I do that." So, your property does not see any different maintenance. If someone splashes spaghetti on the wall, like that's dealt with right away. You're not going to have deteriorated paint. You're not going to have leaks that go unattended. Like basically, I become your property manager. I clean your place so often professionally. And furthermore, I professionally design your space, stage it, and photograph it. And I share these photos with you. So in the case that you ever want to sell later on down the line, you now have photos you can use for your listing, and your property that you just invested $100,000 in renovations for, the integrity of those renovations are still intact, and it still looks good in year 4 as it did in year 1. Right. So that was a very big value add for a lot of these investors. Was like, hey, like I just spent so much money turning this place around. I don't want to do it again when I have to sell. So if I pass it on to Aaron, I know that I'm in good hands. He will pay me the rent. I don't have to deal with LTB, evicting tenants or anything. And I know that I'm going to get the property back in the same condition that it was when I handed it to him. Right. So it just became kind of like a no-brainer kind of situation where it's like, why wouldn't I rent to Aaron?
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of how I started really scaling the portfolio. Is like I built a lot of good relationships with investors. And whenever they were just finishing up a BRRRR on a duplex, a triplex in good areas, they would just pass it off to me. I would take it, I would furnish it, and then I'll list it on Airbnb and make the profit.
And then you split 50-50 with them?
No, I just pay them a fixed rent, and then all the profits I keep. I run the risk. So I own the profits. Yeah.
Got it. And what are the most common question you get from landlords, from investors when they don't understand what Airbnb arbitrage is? What are the most common question they ask? The big top 3.
I think the biggest concern is like, how do I know people aren't going to rent my place and throw a gigantic party?
Yeah.
Right. So this is the common concern that I get all the time, but it's like, well, wouldn't a long-term tenant also pose the same risk? Like there's no guarantee that a long-term tenant won't party in your place, right? Just the same way that a short-term rental guest may or may not party in your place either. So we have specific protocol, right, in place where we screen the guests. We make sure that they're not. So basically, if the property is in Kitchener-Waterloo, we don't accept people who live in Kitchener-Waterloo, because why would you want to rent a property in the same area without a legitimate reason?
Yeah.
Right. And if they are doing so, I want to see good reviews, and I want to make sure that they do have an actual reason as to why they're moving from, their home in Kitchener-Waterloo to another home to short-term rents. So reasons can be like, I'm renovating my house that I'm living in currently. There has been a leak, or I have to get away for whatever reason. But like last minute bookings, like 2-night stays, no reviews, these are guests we don't accept. Number 2 is we have noise monitoring devices like Minute, which monitor the decibels levels in the house. So when it exceeds a certain threshold, it notifies me and our team, and then we get alerted to take action immediately. So that's another way to mitigate parties, right? And we also have ring cameras at the door so that we know that if they registered as like 2 or 3 guests, and if they're bringing like 10 people, like we know something is up and we can reach out to the guests and take action. Mm-hmm. And in the worst case that something does happen and they damage the property in whatever way, there's always Airbnb's air cover insurance where we can always claim back for the damages. And then we can use that money to fix the damages at our own cost. And that cost does not come out from the landlord's pocket.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That sounds really, really good, right? Pay someone or investor fixed rent, then you double the gross income. Yeah, maybe whatever your cost is, you still profit a good amount, bring home a good amount, right? It could be 4,000, 3,000, 4,000 on a duplex even, right? What are some of the risks, would you say, for yourself or for the landlord?
I think for myself personally, it's just like things that I have no control of, right? So like, we had an incident in Windsor where someone had booked for a month, and we got notified like a week into the reservation, and it was the Windsor police, and they were like, we discovered, a lot of drugs, and there's been a crime scene at this property. We're still investigating, but we just had to let the owner or the tenant, the operator of this business, Airbnb, know. And what happened was the guest went missing. I still don't know what happened to the guest, but like they found copious amounts of drugs in the property, and someone had broken into the unit and ransacked the entire place. I don't really know what happened. I still don't know what happened, but like these are things that outside of our control, right? So like these rare incidences where people are just people. I think that's one of the biggest risks is just making sure that your guests don't do.
And when did this happen?
I don't really know
how long has this been in?
So this happened back in January of 2022.
Are you guys responsible for that? Because do you guys own that place or you guys are the operator?
We're operating, so we're just renting.
So is the landlord, the owner, responsible for this crime, or are you guys responsible for that, or the police understand that this is kind of like a hotel business, so you guys do the best you can? Like, it's been a year, right? So
yeah, I mean, like the responsibility falls on us, right, as operators. So like we pay for the costs. In terms of legalities, like, we're just operating, and we're not involved in this at all, right? So, and there's no legal ramifications on that end. For the landlord, like they just want to make sure the property's, recover to its previous state. So we paid for all the repairs and stuff. Beyond that, it's just, making sure we take sufficient documentation, claiming them with Airbnb, and get paid out for that.
Would Airbnb pay for all of the costs you guys pay for renovation?
Yep, as long as you document it properly and then present the invoices that you had to for all the work that was done at the property.
Wow, cool, cool. I know like time flies. So before I go into the fire round, I want you to share what you're doing now. I know we talk about the duplex, the triplex, long-term rental, 22 unit, some Airbnb arbitrage, some of the risks. What are some things that you guys are working on right now? I know you guys were taking down some big projects in US, right? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So currently we're currently negotiating a 123 unit deal in Nashville, a 22 unit townhouse complex in Phoenix. And we're looking at some 100+ unit properties in Detroit. And these are just like big buildings, right? Apartments. And we're negotiating a master lease agreement where we lease the entire building, and we pay the landlord or the investors just rent every single month. Same thing, arbitrage, just times 100 units.
Is there a reason why you choose these 3 markets, Nashville, Phoenix, and Detroit?
Not necessarily. I mean, my partner, Karsten, he's in the acquisition side, and he's always on the hunt for more deals. I think as for Phoenix, like we want to kind of diversify and get into more of the snowbird markets in warmer areas. So that was the reason for Phoenix. Nashville, just the economics and the Airbnb data made sense. Detroit, just the cost basis versus opportunity to make revenue beyond what our operating costs are, I think just made sense for us as well. Like we're constantly looking at different markets and looking at opportunities to expand.
And why go to US? Why not stay in Canada?
I just feel like the opportunities are much greater in the US. And if, like the population as well is significantly larger than Canada, right? And if you even look at the population of, like, let's say, Kitchener-Waterloo, as opposed to a city like Phoenix, it's vastly different. Like the US is just a whole different playground. And I just feel like if you are looking to scale to a certain level, beyond just like 100 units, when you want to get to thousands of units, it just makes sense to go into the playground, which offers more opportunities and bigger opportunities out there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what are you doing with these proceeds of Airbnb arbitrage? Are you putting it back into business? Are you buying more of your own properties? What are you doing with those?
So currently we're just reinvesting all the profits, right? So, these Airbnbs that we have currently, all the profits feed into setting up more Airbnbs, and those Airbnbs feed into setting up more Airbnbs. So it becomes a very compounding process, and it can grow very, very quickly. Like, we started this real estate investing journey / arbitrage scaling in 2020, and now it's like 2022, end of 2022, right? And just the sheer velocity of growth that you can obtain by compounding these high returns is just absolutely phenomenal. Like I just don't really understand. I don't see a better vehicle that someone can use at this point in their life, where they can grow wealth so fast and so significantly.
Yeah, you basically setting up hotels all over. You don't own the hotels, but you're basically using the arbitrage proceeds and put in another 30 to 40K on a new property to renovate them and turn them into making another 30 to 40K, right? Maybe more than that per year. And then you can do more and more on that.
Yeah. So the Airbnbs create more Airbnbs, and more Airbnbs create more Airbnbs. It's a pretty fun business to be in.
Wow. This is amazing. Yeah. Anything you want to let us know before we go into the fire round? I know this podcast is really for high income earners. Fire. I have to ask you this question. What is financial independence, retire early, or retire optionally, whatever that is, means for you? Because you were working as a barista, servers, and then took you 3 years to scale this up. Now you're using Airbnb to make Airbnb babies. So what is your vision for FIRE?
I think a lot of people equate retirement to like a figure, like a dollar amount. But I think retirement to me just means that like you are making money that is disproportionate to your hourly input of time, right? So if you are making, let's say, a job, you're making, let's say, $20 an hour, you have to work every incremental hour to make the additional $20, right? Versus if you set up a business like Airbnb, which runs completely full auto right now at this point in my life, like I don't have to work an additional hour to make more money, right? And once you break out of the loop of having to work more to make more, I think is effectively when you have the option to retire. And retirement to me just means that you're, making more of this passive income than you spend every single month. So if you're making 10 grand a month in passive income, or money that is not tied to your hourly input, and you're spending, say, $5,000 a month in living expenses, then you can consider yourself retired.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well said. Well, we're going to get into our final fire round. Okay. First question is, if you become a billionaire tomorrow, let's say you all of a sudden you have a 1,000 Airbnb making another 1,000 Airbnb babies, you become a billionaire. What will your day look like?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think I'll do anything different, really. I mean, I don't have to work anymore, right? I mean, I could have retired and stopped a long time ago, and I could just live on the passive income. But I think as a man, I have an innate desire for conquest, and I just want to build the biggest empire possible. And I don't think any certain threshold of status or income or dollar figure or amount would ever cause me to stop. If that makes sense. I mean, I think I'll always want to do more because I just am in love with the process. I don't think of this pursuit as a destination like where you will eventually stop. I just think that, you know, the journey is a goal, is my opinion. Like, so because I love what I do and because I'm so passionate about entrepreneurial pursuits, like this doesn't feel like work to me. This is just ingrained in myself naturally.
Mm-hmm. Great. Next question. If all of a sudden you lose all your Airbnb babies, you have to start all over, but we drop you $500,000. What would you start? How would you start?
Good question. I think what I would do is I would take down a 50 to 100 unit arbitrage deal immediately. I would just not waste time doing all the duplexes and all the single family homes. I would just go straight into doing like a big building and just Airbnb everything.
What you're hunting for one, you're negotiating for one right now.
We're negotiating 3 deals right now currently. Yeah.
But haven't landed one yet, right?
Yeah. We're still flirting. We're in the dating stage. We haven't gotten married yet. So
got it. Very excited for that. Keep me posted for that. Now, if you're a podcast host, who would you want to interview?
Well, first, I would want to interview you. I mean, you gave me this opportunity to be on your podcast, so I would love to interview you, to return the favor. I think Alex Hormozy, I really look up to him in this as an entrepreneur. And I think he provides a lot of insights into how to scale a business, indefinitely. And I think Warren Buffett, I think he just has so much wisdom in all of his years. And I just think that, like, as a person in his 90s who's, just become wildly successful and wealthy, I just think he would have so many golden nuggets to pick from. I would just love to interview him as well.
You know what's a funny thing, Aaron? You are richer than Warren Buffett when he's your age. Warren Buffett accumulated a lot of his wealth by compound interest. So he didn't get wealthy until age 50 and over. So at this stage, when he's your age, I think you're actually wealthier than him.
That's pretty wild.
That's pretty wild. Eh? I know. But anyway, at the end of the day is who's the last one standing, right? Warren Buffett is Warren Buffett for a reason because he withstand a lot of uncertainty, right? So a lot of respect for him for sure. What are some of the ways you're giving back to the society or to your community? That's
a good question. I like to be very transparent and open and honest in my Instagram. I post a lot of stories. It's basically like my diary, my journal of all the things that I go through on a daily basis and the lessons that I learn along the way. So yeah, I share just a lot of my insights, and I hope that, other people who are following my journey can learn from my mistakes and hopefully avoid them, and even compound off my own successes and see what's working for me and hopefully piggyback off that so that they can themselves achieve financial freedom for themselves as well.
Great. Last question, how can our audience find more about you if they want to learn more about Airbnb arbitrage?
You can find me on Instagram. It's Real Bae Money. So Real BAE Money.
Is that your real last name?
Yeah, Aaron Bae.
Okay, cool. I never seen that last name before. I thought my last name was really cool. Yay, but Bae is pretty cool too. Okay,
yeah, so Asians have some pretty cool last names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on to our podcast. We had Karsten on a few episodes ahead of Aaron because Aaron was moving back to Korea. So if you guys want to learn more about Airbnb arbitrage, Karsten, his partner, was on it. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
All the links mentioned in this episode are included in the show notes. And if you love this episode, please leave us a rating and review on Apple iTunes. The link is also included in the show notes. And we would really appreciate your help in spreading the word to more high income earners on how they too can maximize both their time and money.
Also, if you still haven't joined our high income earners Facebook group, you are missing out on high income earners community where we help each other reach our own version of FIRE.